My wife called me her practice husband in front of her friends. So I showed her what practice divorce looks like. What's up, Reddit? So this happened last month and I'm still processing the whole thing. Figured I'd share it here because honestly, I need to get this off my chest and maybe some of you guys have been through similar shit. I've, 32 male, been married to Haley, 29 female, for 3 years now, and up until last month I thought things were pretty solid between us. Sure, we had our issues like every couple, but nothing major. At least that's what I thought. Quick background. Haley used to work in marketing at some mid-sized company downtown. Made decent money, had her own thing going. But about a year after we got married, she started talking about how stressful her job was and how she wanted to focus on other opportunities. I make pretty good money, so I told her if she wanted to quit and figure out what she really wanted to do, go for it. Seemed like the supportive husband thing to do, right? Wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So last Friday night, Haley decides she wants to have her girlfriends over for dinner. This isn't unusual. She does this maybe once a month. Usually it's Bella, Jessica, and sometimes this other girl whose name I can never remember. They get together, eat way too much food, and talk about whatever it is women talk about when guys aren't around. I actually don't mind these dinners. Haley seems happy when her friends come over, and I like cooking anyway. Plus, it gives me an excuse to make my famous pasta sauce. And by famous, I mean I dump a jar of Rouse into a pan and add extra garlic and some red pepper flakes. But it tastes good, and everyone always compliments it, so whatever. The girls showed up around 6:30. I spent about an hour in the kitchen getting everything ready. The whole time I can hear them in the dining room getting louder and more animated. When I brought everything out, they were deep in conversation about some drama with one of Bella's other friends. Something about this girl dating her friend's ex or whatever. I wasn't really paying attention because honestly, that kind of high school bullshit doesn't interest me. I set everything down, asked if they needed anything else, and went back to the kitchen to clean up and give them space. Haley always says her friends appreciate that I'm not hovering around trying to be part of their conversations. So I'm in the kitchen loading the dishwasher and wiping down counters when I realize they've moved on to talking about relationships. Nothing unusual there either. That's like 80% of what they discuss. But then I hear my name mentioned, and I kinda tune in without really meaning to. That's when I heard it. Clear as day, Haley saying, "Honestly, girls, Anthony's just my practice husband until I find someone better." I literally stopped moving, like completely froze with a dirty plate in my hand. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard or took something out of context. But then her friend asked, "What do you mean a practice husband?" Then she started explaining to her friends that I'm good for now because I pay all her bills and do the cooking, but she's not going to stay with me forever. Says I'm fine for practice but not husband material long term. The problem is she can't really leave me yet because I pay for literally everything. All three of them start cracking up like it's the funniest thing ever. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in my own kitchen holding dirty dishes, wondering if I actually heard what I think I heard. The worst part wasn't even what she said. It was how casually she said it. Like it was just obvious, accepted fact that everyone already knew. She wasn't confessing some secret or asking for advice. She was just stating the situation like she might comment on the weather. I set the plate down real careful and just stood there for probably 2 full minutes trying to process what I'd just heard. My wife of 3 years. The woman I've been supporting financially for the past 2 years. The person I cook dinner for every night and whose friends I've been entertaining in my own house. She just told those friends that I'm practice. Practice. Like I'm some kind of training wheels she's using until she's ready for the real thing. I thought about walking in there and confronting her right then. Thought about asking her to explain exactly what the hell she meant by practice husband. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the realization that if I made a scene, her friends would never tell me what they really thought about anything ever again. But honestly, I wasn't really thinking. I was just sitting there feeling like an idiot. How long had she been thinking this way? How long had her friends known? Was I the only person who thought our marriage was real? After they left, I waited about an hour. Figured I'd give her time to clean up and get settled before I brought it up. Didn't want to seem like I'd been sitting upstairs plotting or anything. Though honestly, that's exactly what I was doing. When I finally went downstairs, she was loading the last few glasses into the dishwasher. Looked relaxed and happy like she always does after hanging with her friends. I asked her straight up what that comment about me being practice was all about. She acted like she didn't know what I was talking about at first. Just gave me this blank look like I was speaking a foreign language. So I spelled it out for her. Told her I heard what she said about me being her practice husband and how she can't leave because I pay for everything. That's when her whole demeanor changed. The confused act dropped, and she got this look on her face like I was being ridiculous for bringing it up. Oh, that. Yeah, I said that. Do you have a problem? Just like that. No sorry, no explanation. Just asking if I have a problem like I'm being unreasonable for not wanting to be called practice. I looked at her for maybe 10 seconds. Really looked at her. She was standing there looking annoyed that I had the nerve to question her calling me practice. I told her no, no problem at all. And that's when I started planning. So that weekend was probably the longest 48 hours of my life. Haley was acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. Making breakfast Saturday morning, asking if I wanted to go furniture shopping, talking about maybe planning a vacation this summer. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there drinking coffee and thinking about how she basically admitted to using me as a financial safety net. We went to her parents' house for dinner, like we do most Sundays. Sat around their dining room table while her mom asked about work, and her dad told the same stories he tells every week. Haley's playing the perfect daughter and loving wife the whole time, holding my hand under the table, laughing at my jokes, acting like we're this amazing couple. The whole time I'm thinking about what her parents would say if they knew their daughter was planning to trade up from me when someone better came along. Would they still be so friendly? Would her mom still ask me about my work projects and tell me how proud she is of what I've accomplished? Monday morning, I called out sick, told my foreman I was coming down with something and needed a day to rest. First time I'd used a sick day in probably 2 years, but I had more important things to deal with. I drove straight to my lawyer's office downtown. Yeah, I have a lawyer. When you own property and have decent assets, you get one. Learned that lesson from my dad, who got cleaned out in his divorce back when I was in college. I explained the situation without going into too much detail. Told him my wife had made some comments that suggested she was planning to leave me eventually, and I wanted to know where I stood legally. He pulled out my file and started going through the paperwork from when Haley and I got married. Turns out that prenup I insisted on was the smartest thing I ever did. Haley wasn't happy about it at the time. Kept saying it showed I didn't trust her and how romantic couples don't need legal protection from each other. But I'd watched my dad lose half his retirement and the house he'd worked 20 years to pay off. Wasn't making that mistake. The prenup was pretty straightforward. Anything I owned before the marriage stays mine. Anything I earned during the marriage stays mine, unless she can prove she contributed to it financially. Since she quit her job and hasn't worked in 2 years, that would be pretty hard to do. The house is mine, the savings accounts are mine, even the car she drives is registered in my name only. My lawyer explained that technically, since my name is primary on all our accounts, I could move money around as long as I wasn't doing anything that would look vindictive in court. The key was to be smart about it, not emotional. We spent about an hour going through everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, even stupid stuff like streaming service subscriptions. Amazing how much financial stuff gets tangled up when you're married. Most people don't realize how complicated it is to separate two lives that have been combined for years. The crazy part was realizing how much control I actually had. Every credit card was in my name with her as an authorized user. Every utility bill, every subscription, every automatic payment, all tied to accounts that I controlled. She'd been living off my money for so long that she didn't have any independent financial foundation anymore. That afternoon, I started making changes. Nothing dramatic that would tip her off, just small adjustments that would give me more control when the time came. I moved money from our joint checking account to my personal savings. Not all of it, just enough to matter. Changed passwords on a few accounts, updated contact information, so notifications would come to my email instead of hers. The rest of the week, I kept acting normal while quietly preparing. Haley didn't notice anything different because she never paid attention to our finances anyway. She just used her cards and assumed money would always be there. Never asked about balances or budgets or where the money was actually coming from. The next day, I had my lawyer draw up divorce papers. Took about an hour to go through all the details and make sure everything was worded correctly. Thursday, I signed everything. Felt weird putting my signature on papers that would end my marriage, but also felt like I was finally taking control of my life instead of just letting things happen to me. 2 days later, I put the final pieces in place. Made sure all the important accounts were secured and all the legal paperwork was ready to go. Everything had to be timed perfectly for maximum impact while staying completely within legal bounds. See, Haley has this routine every Saturday. She meets Bella and the rest of her friends for brunch at this expensive place downtown. It's become like a weekly tradition for them. They sit around for hours eating overpriced eggs and taking pictures of their food, then usually go shopping afterward. This Saturday was going to be different. Saturday morning started like every other Saturday for the past year. She came downstairs around 10:30, looking like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot. She grabbed her keys off the counter and gave me this quick kiss goodbye. I told her to have fun and watched her drive away in the car that I pay for, wearing clothes that I bought, carrying credit cards that I'm responsible for the last time. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, I made the call to cancel her remaining credit cards. Took about 15 minutes to go through all the account verification stuff and get everything shut down. Next, I called the bank and had them freeze the joint checking account. Told them I suspected unauthorized access and needed to protect the funds while we investigated. Again, technically true. Her access was definitely unauthorized as far as I was concerned. The whole process took maybe 30 minutes. 30 minutes to cut off the financial pipeline that had been supporting her lifestyle for the past 2 years. I spent the rest of the morning setting up boxes in the living room and organizing all the divorce paperwork. Made a neat little pile of everything she'd need to know about finding her own place, getting her own insurance, figuring out her own finances. You know, all the adult stuff she'd been avoiding while I handled everything. Around 1:30, my phone started buzzing. First text from Haley asking me to call the bank because her card got declined. I ignored it. 1:45, another text saying her card wasn't working and she was embarrassed in front of the girls. Still ignored it. By 2:15, she was sending messages in all caps demanding that I answer my phone. The desperation was already starting to show, and she'd only been dealing with this for maybe an hour. Then she started calling. Let it go straight to voicemail. She called 6 more times in the next 20 minutes. Each voicemail got progressively more frantic and angry. The funniest part was when I got a text from Bella saying my wife was losing it at brunch because her cards weren't working. She actually used the laughing emoji. Same girl who'd been cracking up about me being practice was now watching Haley's world fall apart in real time. I texted back asking if everything was okay. Played it like I had no idea what was happening. Bella said Haley was claiming there was some problem with the bank and she couldn't pay for anything. Really? Banking problems? How weird. Then Haley's phone calls stopped. I figured she'd either borrowed money from one of her friends or decided to come home and confront me directly. Based on how well I know her, I was betting on option 2. I was right. Half an hour later, I heard her car pull into the driveway way earlier than expected. I could hear her car door slam from inside the house. Not the normal gentle close she usually did. This was the angry slam of someone who just had a very bad afternoon. The front door opened about 10 seconds later, and she came storming in, looking like she was ready to burn the house down. She was yelling before she even saw me, going off about how her cards got declined in front of everyone, and how Bella had to pay for her lunch, and how embarrassing the whole thing was. How she'd had to make excuses to her friends about why she couldn't go shopping. How the bank must have made some kind of mistake, and why didn't I answer my phone when she needed help. I was sitting on the couch with the divorce papers in my lap and boxes stacked up next to me, just sitting there calm as could be while she went off about her terrible afternoon. When she finally stopped yelling long enough to take a breath, I told her real calm that yeah, I canceled the cards because she doesn't need them anymore. That's when she really lost it. Started demanding to know why I would do that, what was wrong with me, how could I embarrass her like that in front of her friends? Like somehow I was the bad guy for not wanting to fund her lifestyle anymore. But then she noticed the papers and boxes. Her whole attitude shifted from angry to confused real quick. She asked what all this stuff was, and I handed her the divorce papers, explaining that this was her graduation from practice marriage. The look on her face when she realized what was happening was probably worth every penny I'd spent on her over the past 3 years. Pure shock followed by panic, followed by this desperate attempt to backtrack and pretend like none of this was her fault. She tried every approach she could think of. First, she claimed it was all a joke and I was overreacting. Then she got apologetic and promised she didn't mean anything by what she said. Then she got angry again and tried to make it my fault for not understanding her sense of humor. But the damage was done. I'd heard exactly what she thought about our marriage and about me. She'd showed me exactly how much respect she had for the life I'd been providing her. And now she was finding out what life looks like when that support gets pulled away. The whole time she's going through her emotional roller coaster, I'm just sitting there watching her realize that her comfortable little setup was falling apart. That the man she'd been calling practice had just practiced his way right out of her life. And the best part? Her friends got to watch the whole thing start. Got to see her cards get declined and watch her scramble to make excuses. The same friends who'd been laughing about her having a practice husband were now witnessing what happens when practice time ends. I gave her the same deadline I'd give any tenant who wasn't paying rent. 2 hours to pack up and get out. After that, her stuff would be on the curb, and she'd be dealing with this situation from somewhere else. That's when she tried to pull the legal card. Started insisting she couldn't just be kicked out because it was her house, too. She lived here, she had rights, I couldn't just throw her out on the street. I pulled out my phone and showed her the prenup she'd signed 3 years ago. Told her to read Section 4, Paragraph 2, the part that clearly stated the house remained my separate property regardless of how long we were married. Watching her read that prenup was probably the most satisfying moment of this whole thing. You could literally see her face change as she realized how screwed she was. She'd signed away any claim to the house, the cars, the savings accounts, pretty much everything. And she'd done it willingly because she thought she was just humoring my paranoia about protecting assets. She tried to argue that she didn't understand what she was signing back then, that I'd pressured her into it or misled her about what it meant. But we both knew that wasn't true. My lawyer had explained everything in detail. She'd had her own lawyer review it, and she'd signed it because she was so confident in her ability to keep me wrapped around her finger. When the legal reality hit her, she started crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used when she wanted something. She said she didn't have anywhere to go, that all her friends lived with roommates or in tiny apartments. How was she supposed to find a place with no job and no savings? I told her she should have thought about that before calling me practice. The clock was ticking. What happened next was actually pretty impressive from a logistics standpoint. Once she realized I wasn't backing down, she went into full crisis mode. Started calling friends to see who could help her move or let her crash for a few days. Went upstairs and started throwing clothes into suitcases like her life depended on it. The funny part was listening to her phone calls. She couldn't exactly tell people the real reason she was getting divorced, so she had to make up some story about us having irreconcilable differences. A few of her friends offered to help, but you could tell they were confused about why this was happening so suddenly. Then she came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a bunch of random boxes, looking around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. This place she'd been living in for 3 years, treating like her personal hotel, was never going to be hers. She tried one last desperate attempt to change my mind. Stood there in the living room with all her stuff packed, telling me how this was crazy and we were throwing away 3 years of marriage over something stupid, she said. How people make mistakes, but they work through them together. I told her it wasn't stupid, it was honest. She'd finally told the truth about how she saw me and our marriage. I was just acting on that information. The thing that really got to her was how calm I was through the whole thing. She kept expecting me to get angry or emotional or give her an opening to turn this into a big fight where she could play the victim. But I just stayed matter of fact about everything. This was business now, not personal. Then her ride showed up. Bella driving some fancy SUV. She looked uncomfortable as hell, probably wondering what she'd gotten herself into by agreeing to help. The same girl who'd been laughing about the practice husband comment a week ago was now witnessing the aftermath. Right before she got in the car, Haley tried one more time, asked me to please reconsider, to give her another chance to prove that she really did love me and want to make this work. I told her to take care of herself and close the door. Watched through the window as they loaded the last of her stuff and drove away. Bella's car disappearing around the same corner where this whole thing had started a week ago. For the first time in years, everything felt exactly like it should be. That night was probably the quietest my house had been in 3 years. No TV shows I didn't want to watch, no constant chatter about her friends' drama, no planning expensive dinners at restaurants where the food costs more than some people make in a day. Just me, my pizza, and the sound of absolutely nothing. Woke up Sunday morning feeling like I'd been carrying around a weight I didn't even realize was there, and now it was gone. Around noon, my phone started ringing. Haley's mom. I should have seen this coming, but honestly, I'd been so focused on the logistics of everything that I hadn't really thought about dealing with her family. I answered because I figured I might as well get this conversation over with. Her mom launched right into it without even saying hello. Started demanding to know what was wrong with me and why Haley was at their house crying her eyes out, claiming I'd kicked her out for no reason. The whole conversation was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd only heard one side of the story. According to Haley's version, I'd apparently lost my mind over some innocent comment she made to her friends and decided to end our marriage out of nowhere. She'd conveniently left out the part about calling me practice and saying she couldn't leave because I pay for everything. I asked her mom if Haley had mentioned what she actually said about me being practice. Her mom brushed it off, saying I was being dramatic about some comment she made to her friends. Just girl talk, nothing serious. So I spelled it out for her, explained that it wasn't just some comment. Her daughter had told her friends that I'm her practice husband and she can't leave because I pay for everything. Said this in my own house while I was making dinner for all of them. Her mom went quiet for maybe 10 seconds, then came back with this argument about how that's just girl talk, and I can't destroy a marriage over girl talk. Like somehow the fact that women say these things to each other makes it okay. I told her, watch me. That set her off. Started going on about how I was being cruel and vindictive, how Haley made a mistake but she loves me, and we should be able to work through this. How marriages take effort and communication, and I was just giving up at the first sign of trouble. The thing that really annoyed me was how she kept talking about Haley making a mistake. Like accidentally calling your husband practice in front of your friends is the same as forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This wasn't a mistake. It was her honest opinion about our marriage that she'd never intended for me to hear. I explained that Haley loves my bank account, not me. There's a pretty big difference between the two. Her mom didn't like that answer. Started threatening that if I didn't take Haley back, they were going to make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was. How I'd abandoned their daughter when she needed support. How I'd thrown away a good marriage over my own pride. That's when I'd heard enough. Told her good luck with that strategy and hung up. Then I blocked her number because I didn't need to hear any more lectures about what a terrible person I was for not wanting to be called practice. About an hour later, Haley's dad started calling. Same basic conversation, but with more yelling and less emotional manipulation. He was taking the aggressive approach, telling me I was a coward for kicking out his daughter instead of working through our problems like a man. I explained the situation to him too, but he wasn't interested in details. Just kept repeating that real men don't give up on their marriages, and I was being weak and selfish. Apparently, real men are supposed to be okay with being called practice as long as they're married. Blocked his number too. Then Haley's sister started texting. Long messages about how disappointed she was in me and how I was breaking up the family over something petty. How Haley was devastated and I was destroying her life because my ego couldn't handle one stupid comment. Blocked her too. By Sunday evening, I'd basically cut off contact with Haley's entire family. Not because I couldn't handle their criticism, but because none of them seemed to think there was anything wrong with what she'd said. They were all more upset about me leaving than they were about her treating our marriage like a temporary arrangement. Monday morning, my own parents called. My mom started off asking if I was doing okay because they'd heard about me and Haley separating. Word travels fast in families, especially when someone's telling their version of events to anyone who'll listen. I explained the whole situation from the beginning. My dad's response was exactly what I needed to hear. He said good for me, and admitted they'd never really liked how Haley treated me anyway. Said she always seemed like she thought she was better than everyone and acted like she was doing me a favor by being married to me. My mom agreed, saying they'd bitten their tongues for 3 years because I seemed happy, but they could tell that girl was using me. Said they'd seen it from day one, but didn't want to interfere in my marriage. Finally, some support from people who actually cared about me instead of just taking Haley's side automatically. My dad asked if I needed anything or wanted them to come stay with me for a few days, while I got used to being on my own again. I told them thanks, but I was actually doing fine. Better than fine, honestly. For the first time in years, I felt like I could just exist without having to worry about someone else's mood or agenda or expensive habits. The conversation with my parents made me realize something important. The people who really knew me and cared about me weren't surprised by any of this. They'd been watching Haley take advantage of me for years, but respected my choices enough not to say anything unless I asked. Meanwhile, Haley's family was acting like I was the villain for not wanting to be treated like a temporary placeholder. Like I should be grateful for the privilege of funding someone's lifestyle while they openly planned to trade up when something better came along. The difference in reactions told me everything I needed to know about whether I'd made the right decision. My family was relieved that I'd finally stood up for myself. Her family was mad that their meal ticket had dried up. The next day, I changed my relationship status on social media and updated my emergency contacts at work. Small things, but they felt significant. Like I was officially reclaiming my life instead of just sharing it with someone who didn't really want to be there. By the end of the week, the dust had mostly settled. Haley's family had stopped trying to contact me, probably because they realized I wasn't going to change my mind. My own family was checking in regularly, but giving me space to process everything on my own timeline. The house felt completely different. Not empty, just peaceful. Like I could finally relax without worrying about someone judging my choices or planning their exit strategy behind my back. I was starting to remember what it felt like to just be myself, instead of trying to be whatever version of myself someone else wanted me to be. Then I got a text from Bella. Hey Anthony, hope you're doing okay. Can we talk? I'm really confused about what happened with you and Haley. Give me all the tea. The audacity was unreal. This was the same girl who'd been losing it laughing when Haley called me practice at that dinner. She'd been there for the conversation that started all this. She knew exactly what happened. I deleted the message and blocked her number. 3 weeks went by without a single word from Haley. No texts, no calls, no random drive-bys or attempts to get my attention through mutual friends. For a while, I thought maybe she'd actually accepted that it was over and moved on with her life. I really should have known better. I was home Saturday afternoon working on refinishing this old coffee table I'd bought at an estate sale when my doorbell rang. I figured it was probably a package delivery, or maybe one of my neighbors asking to borrow something. Looked through the window, and there's Haley standing on my porch. But she wasn't alone. She had some guy with her. Tall, decent looking, wearing one of those expensive button-down shirts that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Designer jeans, fancy watch, the whole corporate pretty boy package. They were holding hands like they wanted to make sure I noticed. I opened the door and Haley immediately launched into this introduction. Wanted me to meet Chandler, her new boyfriend. Said they'd been dating and she thought it was important that I meet him, since we were still finalizing the divorce. The guy looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You could tell he was uncomfortable and probably had no idea why his new girlfriend was dragging him to her ex-husband's house. But Haley was putting on this whole performance, acting like she was so happy and moved on and everything was perfect in her new life. I looked at both of them for a second and asked if they'd only come here to tell me that. Simple question, but it cut right through whatever game she was trying to play. Chandler immediately looked at Haley like he was confused about what was actually happening. She started getting flustered, saying she wanted me to see that she was doing fine without me and had found someone who really appreciated her. I told them that was cool and asked if they needed anything else or if I could get back to my Saturday. Just completely matter-of-fact about the whole thing. That's when Chandler spoke up. Asked Haley what this was really about because she'd told him they were just stopping by to pick up something she'd forgotten. Turns out she'd lied to get him to come with her. Probably told him some story about needing moral support or protection or whatever. You could see the exact moment he realized what was actually happening. His whole demeanor changed from uncomfortable to pissed off. Started asking if she'd brought him here to make her ex-husband jealous and whether she was serious right now. Haley tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. This guy had figured out that he was being used as a prop in whatever drama she was trying to create. He dropped her hand, took a step back, and told her he wasn't doing this. Said she could find her own way home and walked back to his car. Just left her standing there on my doorstep looking stupid while he drove away. The whole thing took maybe 3 minutes from start to finish. Her big plan to make me jealous had backfired completely, and now she was stranded at my house with no ride and no backup plan. "Are you happy now?" she said. Like somehow this was my fault that her scheme had blown up in her face. Like I'd forced her to lie to some guy and drag him over here for this pathetic display. I didn't say anything. Just stood there waiting to see what she'd do next. That's when she did the most desperate thing I've ever seen. Looked me right in the eyes and said, "Okay, fine, I'm single now. Let's just get back together. We can start over and pretend none of this ever happened." I actually laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. Here's this woman who'd called me practice, put me through 3 years of being treated like a placeholder, brought another guy to my house to try and make me jealous, and now she wanted to get back together because her rebound had ditched her on my doorstep. The audacity was incredible. She really thought I'd been sitting around waiting for her to come back, that I'd just been killing time until she was ready to give our marriage another shot. Like I should be grateful that she was willing to settle for her practice husband again, now that her upgrade plan had failed. I was still laughing when I closed the door in her face. She started yelling through the door about how I was making a mistake, and how we belonged together, and all this desperate stuff. Kept pounding on the door and ringing the doorbell like a crazy person. I put on my headphones and went back to working on the coffee table. Eventually, she gave up and left. I watched through the window as she called someone for a ride, probably having to explain to whoever picked her up why she was stranded at her ex-husband's house with no way to get home. The whole thing was so pathetic it was almost sad. That was 2 months ago now. Haven't heard from her since, though I did hear through a mutual friend that she's living back with her parents and working at some retail job. Apparently, the whole influencer lifestyle doesn't work as well when you don't have someone else paying for it. Meanwhile, I got promoted again last month, and I'm thinking about getting a dog. Maybe take some cooking classes, learn to make something more impressive than jar sauce pasta. Travel somewhere I actually want to go instead of just wherever looks good on social media. It's funny how everything worked out. She said I was practice until she found someone better. Turns out I was practice too. Practice for being the kind of man who doesn't put up with being treated like a backup plan. She practiced being terrible at marriage, and I practiced ignoring red flags. Now we're both practicing being single, except I'm way better at it than she is. Guess practice really does make perfect after all.